I love the story of the walk to Emmaus, told in Luke's Gospel. It is a familiar story and has inspired Christian courses and charities. But how can I find something fresh to say about it? Perhaps that is not the point. Perhaps it is for you who listen again to this story to find where you are in it at this moment in time in your lives. For where you are will vary at each telling. The road to Emmaus is not on any map. The road is yours to choose where you join in this walk today. I always imagine the two on this journey as a married couple. The husband is named as Cleopas and the other unnamed. Quite usual in a patriarchal society. Maybe I think of them in this way because after years of answering the phone for my husband, I tend to be known even now as Dr. Taylor's wife, especially in Soham, and that is fine. The story begins with them walking away from the events they have witnessed, distancing themselves. Are you in this place? It has been a traumatic few days for them. They are described as looking sad, which is a Luke understatement. I suggest that they may be more accurately described as distraught. They have lived in a close and personal way through the events of the cross. This couple knew Jesus, for they spoke of the wonderful things he said and did, this one whom they saw as prophet. They had attended supper with him, and they had hopes that he was the one, the Redeemer they were waiting for, and they had seen him crucified. We have a strange relationship with that instrument of torture. We polish it and put it around our necks, carve it into a comfortable shape to hold, or adorn it with spring flowers for our Easter cards. The reality of this method of execution on one who had been almost whipped to death is horrific. Its ending, similar to those in the last stages of the coronavirus, makes this so very vivid. Their eyes were kept from recognizing him, we read. This is no deliberate act of divine shielding. They each carried that final image of their friend in death. No wonder they did not recognize him. In funerals I've taken, where loved ones have been unrecognizable, either physically or mentally at the end, I am often asked how long before they can be rid of that memory. So many today are on this part of the road, having said goodbye to those they love, never to see them again, and carrying that picture of their family member, frightened and very ill. All I could do is tell this story and point out the healing of our Lord, who appeared as resurrection, whole and carrying only the marks of his love for us, and the promise of his presence with us always. It's good to talk, and talk our two disciples did. Many years later, Shakespeare, who knew a thing or two about death, including the death of his only son, wrote in Macbeth, "Give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak knits up the o'erwrought heart and bids it break." Our two on the road talked with one another, and with this stranger who joined them at the place they had got to. Is this where you are on the road? They went over the events, their hopes and fears, and the disturbing idea that some women at the tomb had been told that he lived. Then they listened. This is the next step they took in their walk, and maybe in yours. He explained things to them from the beginning, the answer to that question, why did this have to happen? They later recalled how their hearts burned within them as he opened up the scriptures to them on the road. Ever been on that section of the road? Many years ago, I enrolled for the Bishop's Certificate, a course for beginners that gave an overall view of the Bible. Not sure why I was there. It was held in the evening for 2 hours. When I arrived, tired with work, children, etc., and saw this elderly priest, the Reverend Eric Hutchinson, hunched over a lectern, I wondered how I was going to stay awake. Then he started to speak, and he had the whole room in the palm of his hand, and I knew something of how those disciples on the road felt. Is this where you are? At the end of the road, they offered this stranger hospitality. Maybe you are here, a feeder, a provider for others, someone who cares. Being vulnerable at this time in the pandemic, I owe much to those who have taken on this role for us and for so many others. I bash my pans on Thursdays and say with many of you a thank you for all that help given so generously and selflessly. Then the roles are reversed on our two travellers. They are no longer the providers this stranger is. And as they watch him talking and blessing the bread, suddenly they know who he is. I recall our mentor, Reverend Eric, saying to us, and I didn't grasp it then, that it is only through the prism of the cross that you can truly see he who is resurrection. They get it, and immediately he vanishes. They have to relate to him in a different way now. And they do, because they are up and off, back to Jerusalem, but not back to where they started. Now they have a new message. Their hearts, we can imagine, are filled to bursting with pure joy, and the message they can join with those other disciples, that the Lord is risen indeed. The end of their journey is also the beginning. Be here too. We are in strange times, but what has kept me going has been an anthem that our choir director David had been rehearsing with us. It is called Do Not Be Afraid by Philip Stopford. It contains the lines, when the fear of loneliness is looming, then remember I am at your side. When you dwell in the exile of a stranger, remember you are precious in my eyes. Do not be afraid, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. It will be good when we can at last together sing this to you. Until then, I keep these words of hope, that our Lord is with us, and no one dies alone. He is with us now, just as real as he was to those two disciples, Luke recorded in such beautiful detail, as the Lord walked with them on the road to Emmaus. Amen.